So most people actually believe politics attract the worst kind of people, power hungry, status seeking, out of themselves. In fact, surveys show that a huge majority of citizens think people enter politics mainly for influence and prestige, not to serve. But what if that belief is actually part of the problem? What if how we talk about politics determines who enters politics and ultimately how governments behave? For decades, researchers have been focused on fixing democracy after politicians are elected. Better rules, better incentives, more monitoring. But this research flips the question. What if the real issue starts before elections? With who decides to run in the first place? Because if the wrong people keep entering politics, no amount of reform after the fact can fully fix that. And we all know it. To test this idea, researchers went to villages across somewhere in Pakistan, a country where local government play a big role in delivering everyday services. They focused on newly created village councils where ordinary citizens, not career politicians, could realistically imagine running for office. And then they tried something surprisingly simple. They changed how political office was described. Imagine two villages. In village A, politics is described like this. If you become a politician, you gain respect, status, and influence. And in village B, politics is described differently. If you become a politician, you can help your community, fix roads, improve schools, respond to people's needs, and all of that. So, same elections, same results, same information about how to run. The only difference was what politics was said to be for. Here is where it gets interesting. In villages where politics was framed as serving others, almost twice as many people decided to run for office. And voters were more likely to elect them. These weren't random people. These were individuals who, under the usual story of politics, never would have stepped forward. Not because they couldn't win, but because they didn't see politics as a place for people like them. But here is the key question. Did this actually change anything once they were in office? And the answer is yes. 1 year later, the researchers went back and compared what citizens wanted their budgets to prioritize with what elected leaders actually funded in villages where politics had been framed as community service. So spending decisions were significantly closer to citizens' preferences. The gap between what people wanted and what government did shrank meaningfully. And in literal terms, policy looked more like what people asked for. And here's the most powerful insight. This only worked when the message was delivered in public, not in private, not as a quiet nudge, but openly where everyone could see that politics was being framed as service. That public framing did two things. It encouraged community-minded people to step forward. It helped voters coordinate around those candidates. Politics became less about ambition and more about responsibility. This challenges a very particular held assumption. We often think politics corrupt people, but this research suggests something more uncomfortable. Our idea of politics may be what corrupts who enters it. If politics is seen as a ladder to status, we attract climbers. If it's seen as a space for service, we attract builders. So here is what we need to be looking out for. Better governance doesn't start with better laws. Or maybe, that may be too hard to say. It starts with who feels politics is meant for them. Who feels politics is meant for them to serve or to freshen up their ego. And that depends in part on the story we tell about power. So I'll leave us with one question. If politics in your country were talked about as service instead of status, who do you think would run? And who would finally stay out of it? This may sound a little difficult to think about, but I think it's quite important. And the question people may ask is, aren't politicians already aware that politics is supposed to be about service? That is also something we need to be looking at. However, this is what this research has gotten for us today. Thank you.